ladies and gentlemen, welcome into SEC Nightly, the nightly show dedicated to the top news and notes from the nation's top conference. As always, I'm your humble host, Brooks Austin. We got a jam-packed show for you guys tonight. Obviously, this past weekend was the NFL Combine up there in Indianapolis, so we're doing a full recap show tonight. We're going to hit all 4 days of the NFL Combine one by one. We will give you winners and losers from each day. And, of course, when I say we, you know I'll be bringing on my boy Cole Thompson from over there on All Aggies on SI.com. One of the best doing it in terms of evaluating prospects. There's a lot of names, right? A lot of people to remember, a lot of prospects to remember. Cole Thompson, one of the best doing it at that. But before we bring them on, you know I got to ask you for some support. I know it's just a minute and a half early into the show. But however, wherever you found us, give us those thumbs ups, give us those hearts, all that, fun stuff. If you found us on the podcast, yes, we do have a podcast. I know most of you guys watch the live stream and whatnot, but if you want to check out the podcast, just search SEC Nightly on all your podcast platforms. Wherever you want, we will be there. All right, let's bring in Cole Thompson via the SI.com StreamYard feed. My boy Cole, how are we doing tonight, brother?
Hanging in there, dude. Now that we are kind of done with the recruiting process, and now we're also kind of done with football and almost basketball right now, it's moving into looking at the guys who are from your college and where they're going to possibly land at the next level. That's, I think, the next big step for guys who work in the college football realm, especially if you cover multiple sports. So this is going to be a big next couple of weeks, especially with pro days coming up. I think a lot of these guys have already named where they're going to be selected or what round they're in, but maybe if you can just get a little bit more tweaks to maybe move up or even move down just a little bit.
Yeah, right. You go take your combine performance, you fine-tune it a little bit, and you get another crack at it in a much more friendly environment at your local school, right? I know some of these big programs, they got those turf fields. One of them specifically leans downward at a downward angle, maybe make them pro day 40s just a little bit faster. I've seen some wild things out in the recruiting world before, the least of which is a field that's slightly tilted downwards about 2 degrees. Hey, man, every 1/100th of a second is valuable in this evaluating process. It's what stacks you up different next to the, up against the next prospect. So let's get into these winners and losers. We're going to go day by day, Cole, starting with the quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends that were on the field Thursday night there in Indianapolis. First of all, let's get your overall review. Do you like the new time slot? Do you like the late evening NFL Combine, Cole?
No, I do not.
Not a fan.
Especially because of, and I was reaching out to one of my buddies, and he actually told me that this was something that an agent told him, if you're going to make players wait around all day, we're not going to have them come next year, because if we're not going to risk having our players be injured and our clients be injured to lose out on millions of dollars because if you want to place this in a prime time slot. Listen, I think the NFL Combine is great, but there's this great app called YouTube that you're watching now. You can catch up if you're really into it. I don't know how much people watch the Combine. I know I do, just because I cover it, and I've been covering the NFL draft on and off for years. So I do understand how there are those people who need to watch it. But if they are watching it, you have to remember, media members are not allowed inside the Combine outside of media days and media spotlights. So when the drills hit, that's how you find out the information. Outside of that, unless you're a diehard fan, you're not really paying attention. And most of these media members are paid to do it. So it's part of their job. For me, watching guys from A&M, it's part of my job. It's part of in my description of things that I have to do. Same with you with Georgia guys. It's in our job description to watch them. Other fans, if you want to watch, cool. If you can't watch, YouTube's a great device. So I'm not a fan of it at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's a made-for-TV event, right? I mean, most of it, you know the scouting world as well as I do, Cole. A lot of it, yeah, they watch what's going on the field, but the whole reason for the Combine is for what happens off and outside of Lucas Oil Stadium, what happens in those back channels, what happens in those meetings, in those steakhouses. It's pretty legendary stuff, and it's all well written upon. These really, really, let's call it rich and powerful coaches, GMs, scouts, and all these guys. It's just one big boys club for 5-6 days up there in Indianapolis. They all share stories. They all share techniques and theories and whatnot. That's mainly what it's for. All that other stuff is just made for TV. And if you're going to make it for TV, I understand why NFL Network, and this year with a joint venture, if you will, with ESPN, live streaming it and, simulcasting it there on both channels, it's a very profitable event for those television networks. I understand that. But Cole, do you think there was a legitimate connection between, and be quick here because we got a lot to hit on. Do you think there was a legitimate connection between some of these injuries and these guys having to wait around all day?
I don't think there was a direct connection, but I understand how people do think there was a connection. Listen, in years past, they would go back to back to back. It used to be a 5-day event because they would allow other teams to do just offensive linemen, defensive linemen at the same time, and they'd be able to work drills during simultaneously. So it kind of sped things up. I think waiting around all day after testing at the very beginning of the day is going to lead to possible cramps as well as possible tweaks. And those are things that were very noticeable in the first year change. Multiple guys got hurt. And I'm not sure we would have seen that if it was during the middle of the day.
That's fair. All right, let's get into these winners and losers. We'll start with you, day one. Quarterbacks, tight ends, wide receivers. Give me a winner and give me a guy who maybe didn't quite perform as well as he'd hoped.
All right, let's just go 2 winners real fast. I'll focus on this first one. Jalen Hurts out of Oklahoma, former Alabama quarterback. This is a guy who I think at least solidified himself. He had to go into the process after going to the Senior Bowl, once again stating, I am a quarterback. And I think he proved that he can be at least somewhat of a quarterback at the next level. Do I think that he earned himself a top first-round grade? Absolutely not. But I do think a mid-late second-round grade. He showed his ability to read things in the pocket. He had a pretty solid arm. His progression through his snaps were very well. He definitely looked like the leader, and he has all the off-field intangibles that you want. Second winner is Jerry Jeudy. I think that everything when you look at his 40 time, which was about a 4.46, you look at his speed, you look at his ability to create separation. You look at what he did in the red zone drill, which, I don't personally like, but, I understand that it's there.
Made CeeDee Lamb some money.
It did. It made CeeDee Lamb good. I think, though, it shows with CeeDee being a little slower and Henry Ruggs not participating in any of the other drills, it solidified him as wide receiver number 1 in this year's draft class. There's a couple of guys that I spoke to who said teams are very high on Jerry Jeudy, and while this offensive line class could be very special, they may be willing to pass up on an offensive tackle, go day 2 for someone, and go get a guy like Jerry Jeudy in that top 10 range.
That's fair. I mean, you might get a guy who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, like Isaiah Wilson on day 2. Is a solid, project at the tackle position. You can stick him out there at right tackle, first about 6-7 games in the middle of the season, and he'll be able to hold his own. So day 2, deep tackle class as well. Probably a good shot that a lot of these wide receivers go early. If you want to stick in the wide receivers group for winners, I'll take Justin Jefferson since you didn't take him. The 4.42 or 4.43, whatever it was, for him to run that at 6'2 1/4, 205 pounds, 215 pounds is incredible. That speed, that top end speed didn't quite show up on tape, but the tape's phenomenal. The ability to get open within the slot is, something that's going to translate onto the next level, and him running that fast in a straight line shows that he could potentially play that outside receiver if asked to do so at the next level. So he obviously is a winner right off the bat. But the guy you mentioned stole it right out of my mouth. Jalen Hurts, I thought, made some money this weekend at the NFL Combine. Man, when you run fast, you jump high, and you throw the football well and on time like he did, I heard a lot of people in this scouting combine, leaving the scouting combine, that after reevaluating after this week, especially with the way they both interviewed, both killed it in the interview process, the workout looked better from Jalen Hurts. I mean, in comparison to Jake Fromm. So, I mean, that is just the reality, and that rolls right into my loser, who was Jake Fromm. And it's not because he came out and performed terribly, but he ran the slowest. The arm strength comparative to the next, top 5 guys didn't look like it. The ball looks like it's got a little bit more life coming out of Jalen Hurts' hand for that much. When you leave the combine and people are talking about, obviously Burrow and Tua, they're in their own separate category. Herbert trying to squeeze his way into that QB3. Jordan Love squeezing his way into that conversation for QB3 as well. Now I feel like leaving the combine, Hurts certainly caught up to Jake Fromm in this process, if not even might have surpassed him leaving the combine. What do you say about that, Cole?
Listen, I said going into this, if you want a quarterback who's going to be in the league for 10 to 12 years as the solidified backup and continue to make money, Jake Fromm is your guy. The smartest quarterback in the NFL, pretty much a Ryan Fitzpatrick 2.0 when it comes to mental processing and his ability to read defenses and be an incredible mentor on and off the field. The problem is his on-field production doesn't match the brain that goes with it. And you saw all that with his intangibles, including the 40 time, the bench press, his vertical, everything with it kind of matched alongside of it. I think Jake Fromm is a standout player because of what he did for Georgia as the leader of the group. But leadership only goes so far as long as there's no production there. And that is something that worries me with Jake Fromm at the next level. I said it last week before we even had the Combine show. I don't think that he's an NFL starter. I do think that he could be a career backup, find plenty of money in there, coming in a pinch. But it's not a guy who I think is definitely going to be that next big name. Another loser, and we'll just focus on him real fast. He didn't even perform at the Combine, but to me, T. Higgins' comments about not being prepared for the NFL Combine, wanting to wait for his pro day, kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Every other player is there to make a name for themselves, if healthy, to go run, do the Combine drills, and meet with teams to show that he is valuable in that first-round range. And Higgins' production on the field is worth that first-round range. But when you have guys like Justin Jefferson making that step and Brandon Ayuk out of Arizona State kind of jumping forward, this now puts you in a very difficult process of possibly having to now excel at your pro day, or else you're going to lose a ton of money.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely puts you in a situation where you've got to ball out at your pro day there at Clemson, because if we roll in a 4.6 right there from T. Higgins, who it's possible it could be that slow, Cole. I mean, this is a big-bodied target out there on the edge from Clemson, and wasn't a guy who blew up the test circuit out of high school either. So it's not something that if he does run slow, we probably know why, barring any type of injury, which we talked about Thaddeus Moss just 24 hours before it came out that he had an injury with his foot. That's why he didn't perform. But if it's not an injury, man, get your butt out there and compete, especially when the other top guys are going. Like you said, Judy had a great day. CeeDee Lamb had a great day. Henry Ruggs blew up the 40. So, and Justin Jefferson obviously had a great day as well. So, just a loser by, not being out there basically there from T. Higgins outside the conference nonetheless. On to day 2, Cole. Who are some guys you thought made some money?
That was defensive line group. I'm going to go with the guy that
No. Day 2 was O-line's running backs.
Oh, that's right. It was O-line running backs. All right. Well, plain and simple. It's any team that needs an offensive tackle. That's the best way to put it. I'm going to link them all together because they all had good days. I spoke to 10 scouts over the weekend about what they thought of who they thought was the best offensive tackle. I got 4 different answers who was OT tackle 1, and it was all 4 guys who are performed up there. Jedrick Wills, we're focused on him. He ran just over a 5'40". He also had a very solid vertical. He's being looked at to play multiple positions on the offensive line, so he's versatile. That I think is going to play into his favor. I think you have Mekhi Becton out of Louisville.
Mekhi Becton,
160 pounds plus, running a 5'40".
5'1",
those are insane numbers. Plus, he had, I think, a 32-inch vertical. Then you have Iowa's Chris DeWurst, another guy who was a player making a name for himself as a vertical threat. He had a 36.5 vertical, the highest of an offensive tackle ever, higher than DeAndre Hopkins had when he went to the NFL Combine, just for comparison, and fastest 40 time of 4.85. And then Andrew Thomas. He ran a 5'40". He had pretty good numbers on the bench press. He still had a pretty good day with broad jump. I talked to some scouts. They said that his fluidity and his ability to move inside the pocket as a pass protector makes him worthy of that plug-and-play left tackle at the next level. I think all 4 of them won money. And also there's some later guys. Prince Ortega-Tongo out of Auburn. I think Isaiah Wilson, the guy that you named, another guy who I think earned some money. I think you look at also Josh Jones and Austin Jackson. All of them are going to earn money and be top 50 picks. So if you need an offensive tackle, you're a really good team. And sorry, Houston, but you probably should have waited a year because you would have gotten a tackle instead of trading for a better one on Laremy Tunsil.
Oh no, Laremy Tunsil's a pretty damn good football player, but I'm gonna stick it. I'm gonna stick in the tackle department too. And you already mentioned him. We already mentioned him. Isaiah Wilson, guy made money this weekend, right? I mean, at 350 pounds plus, there's only been 2 guys at the NFL Combine to go sub 1.8 seconds in the 10-yard split. Mekhi Becton and Isaiah Wilson. Those are really, really, really big human beings moving very quickly in a confined space. For reference, Isaiah Wilson at 350 pounds ran a 1.77 in the 10 split. Andrew Thomas, his counterpart at the University of Georgia, went 1.83 in the same 10-yard split. So back to what you were talking about with Andrew Thomas, it's the complete opposite of Wilson, right? Wilson's this big, dynamic, physical presence and physical freak, whereas Andrew Thomas is going to be, or has the potential to be OT1, in my opinion. He is OT1 because of the technicalities, right? Because of how fluid he is on the field and how technical he is at the offensive tackle position. Hands down, the best left tackle to ever play at the University of Georgia, whereas Wilson might be the biggest and baddest physical specimen that's ever walked through there at Georgia, just in terms of sheer physical size and measurables. So for him to go out and run whatever it was, the 5.33 in the inline 40 doesn't really matter to me. For him to go that quick in that short area 10 burst shows me how explosive he is, and a guy who we question his footwork, right? He still looked tight in the on-field drills, still looked a little like he had lacked a little bit of mobility, but you're going to get what you're going to get in Isaiah Wilson. That's going to be a dominant run blocker and a physical presence. And for the lack of a better term, Cole, the guy you walk off the bus first. I mean, he is going to scare some people just flat off his physical presence. And maybe he turns into an Orlando Brown, another 6'7", 350-pound tackle that doesn't win with a ton of athleticism, but just wins with brute strength and a good hand shock. So maybe that's what happened. My second winner, I'm going to stick in the Georgia lane from Friday night's performance. DeAndre Swift going 4.48 in the 40 just cemented him as running back one in a first-round draft pick, in my opinion. When you turn on the tape, hey, brother, I don't know if he's going to land there. I'd take him there, okay? Now, whether or not you want to say he's going to be a dynamite pass protector in the league, whether or not he's going to be able to pick up blitzes from 6'3", 240-pound linebackers, snap in and snap out, probably not. But he's a three-down back and can stay on the field if you want to use him as a weapon out of the backfield. So for him to go that fast, for me, it just confirmed what I saw on tape, what I saw in person. DeAndre Swift, running back one, confirmed that. What say you, Cole Thompson?
I mean, I think he's running back two. I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. I love his speed and I love his production at Wisconsin. This was a guy who I was already vying for as RB1 going into the start of the season. It was between him and Swift. Him
Cole,
having the fast 40. Yeah.
Can I ask you something? I know I just cut into your segment, but he's not an A&M guy, so I don't care about your video content. Here's the deal. How many times did you see Jonathan Taylor on film not get hit up until 7 yards, where he's just running into massive gaping holes?
Argue with that. Yeah, he's running into the trenches, and he's getting first contact within a yard of getting the ball. I mean, that's a given. But I do think that he is a guy who has the speed. That was a big question for me. He has the ability to, I think, be a durable running back. And I think everyone in this running back class right now is not viewed as a full three-down starter. I think that they're all viewed as secondary guys. And to me, this is solidified one. I wouldn't take a running back on day one if I didn't need to, but I would also be willing to trade back out of the first round to get my running back at the start of early day two and pick up some more draft picks. There are teams that do have needs at running back very early. I think the Kansas City Chiefs are one. Maybe the Tennessee Titans will be one if they let Derrick Henry walk. But if you trade back out of that first round, maybe you get your guy and you can pick up some picks too. I think Swift had a great day. I just think Taylor had a little bit better. The range between the two isn't that much on my big board. I think Taylor's 34 and I think Swift is 36. I mean, there's one player in the gap, but I do think that Taylor just solidified himself for me as running back one.
My man's got a big board. Check out Cole Thompson. Any losers? You got any losers? I know I have one.
I mean, it's not from the SEC, but it's Trey Adams out of Washington. This was a guy who I was super high on a couple years ago. I mean, don't get me wrong, he had the best quote of the freaking weekend. That's
what I was smiling about. Yeah, if y'all haven't seen Trey Adams' quote
because we all have
combine,
but at the same time, his numbers were not good on the 40. He did not look fluid in his pass protection. He wasn't hitting the bag pretty well. I didn't see anything that stood out as a big-time player, and because of that, he reminds me a lot of Mitch Hyatt last year, a guy who was probably a first-round talent the year before, now probably undraftable.
Damn, that's falling like a rock. Loser I got, and again, kind of like the Fromm scenario, but not as bad because I felt like Fromm made some errors and underthrew some footballs on Thursday night. But a guy who did some losing, or maybe not lost money because he's still going to be a top 15 pick most likely. But Andrew Thomas, of that big four, of that quartet of tackles, and we put out an article on Bulldog Maven earlier in the week, of those four tackles, Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills, Mekhi Becton, and Andrew Thomas, he got outperformed by all three guys. I mean, that's just bottom line what it is. But when you look when you turn the tape on, he is by far I think he's got the best tape of those four tackles, and that says a lot because Jedrick Wills played his butt off this year at Alabama. But I think the tape over 3 years looks best. I think there's fewer questions about Andrew Thomas's game going in to the NFL, but maybe the ceiling's not as high, and that's what the measurables kind of told us, right? If you sat down and told me Tristan Wirfs' ceiling as a prospect is higher than Andrew Thomas, I would probably be liable to agree with you because of what the measurables look like and what the pedigree looks like there at Iowa in his 3 years of starting. Only as Sarah Bettinger came on here and told us the other night, Friday night, Tristan Wirfs, the only freshman ever true freshman to start at either of the tackles there for Iowa. So got on the field early for Kirk Ferentz, which is very, very hard to do, obviously. But the ceiling there for Wirfs or a guy like Jedrick Wills, and especially a guy like Mekhi Becton, may be higher than Andrew Thomas. But I think the safest bet, if I had to go home and put my head on the pillow as an NFL evaluator, as an NFL general manager, and feel comfortable about the first-round decision I made at left tackle, I'm taking Andrew Thomas because I feel safe about it. But that being said, that's my opinion, and his combine performance did not help him jump those guys.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't think it hurt him either. Right?
No.
So just,
and that's what I'm saying. Not really a loser, but it's a net gain. He didn't gain anything from the NFL combine.
I think when you look at his stock, it's more 8 to 13, 14 range, more so than a guy like Wills or Wirfs, where the Giants could be selecting for a right tackle. But I don't see Thomas being in that selection process at number 4. I see him maybe starting around 8, where Arizona's picking.
All right, all good. Let's move on to day 3, D-line and linebackers. Cole, I'll let you start up first. Who is the guy you felt like won the day?
I think there's a few. I'm going to go with 2 right now, just off the back, and I'll just throw him this name.
Give me your boy. Give me your
First
boy.
Dude, he'll be last. First off, just Isaiah Simmons. He was my number 1 player in the year's draft inside of Chase Young. 4.3940, the fastest 40 times since 2003. Vertical was phenomenal. His ability in coverage is fantastic. 5-position player. Here's the deal. You draft guys who are good at a position. We've seen these hybrids before. This is the final product of a hybrid out of Clemson. Simmons is my number 2 player on my big board. Draft him. Just let him fly. Second, I'm going to go William Gay Jr. out of Mississippi State. This is a name that people don't mention enough. And I do think that he is someone who needs to get more of that attention. He had a very solid 40 time. His broad jump was fantastic. And he's someone, when you look back on the tape, he's a thumper. You want someone like that to kind of make a name for themselves in the middle of the trenches. He's probably more so set for a 3-4 interior inside linebacker role. But I do think that there is a role for him, kind of like Benardrick McKinney had with the Houston Texans. I thought he had a very fantastic combine performance and certainly earned himself some money. And finally, I'm going to go Justin Madubuike at Texas A&M. This is a guy who I think solidified himself as a top 50 prospect, maybe starting to garner some first-round conversation. He was moving at 4.83 in the 40 time and had a broad jump of 115 inches at nearly 300 pounds. You don't see that often and have guys who are that fantastic with the bull rush ability. If you add all that together, this is a guy who can play a 3-tech. He can play a nose. You can play him as a defensive end. I think that there's plenty of roles for him in any defense, and he certainly solidified himself as an early day 2 pick, if not a late round 1 selection.
Yeah, certainly going into the process, I don't know if a lot of people knew Justin Madubuike's name. Leaving it, they're learning to have to pronounce the last name there, so that's always a good thing for a guy like that. And you talked about Willie Gay Jr. came out and put some numbers down. You didn't quite get to him. 4.46 in the 40, 11.4 in the broad jump, 39.5 inches on the vertical. So tested out of this world for a guy who, Cole, you hit on it. He had to test out of the world. Only 99 career tackles in 3 years there at Mississippi State, and only 5 games this past season due to injury. So a guy who had to show something that would pop off other than, the measurables a little bit. Cole's messing with his feed there, whatever he's got going on back there. But no, Willie Gay Jr., a guy that certainly made himself some money this past weekend at the NFL Combine. And one of those go back and check the tape type of performances. You talked about it, a thumper, but a guy, you see him test like that, and you got to wonder over 30-some-odd starts, 30-some-odd career games, why he only has 99 career tackles. You have to start wondering about those things, especially when he lays down a 40 like that and measurables like that overall all around. Now we got Cole back in here. Cole, a loser that I'm going to hit on, and again, I'm huge on this prospect. So when I say this guy lost the NFL Combine, I think it just means a team in that 15 to 12 range, 12 to 15 range, just won the NFL Combine because Derek Brown didn't exactly test well. He ran slow, he jumped low, and his 3-cone drill didn't look great. 8.22. Now, here's the deal, Cole. He put out a video today on his social media and told people to get the clocks out themselves with his L-cone drill. That is, let's call it what it is. It actually is. It's historically bad for a prospect with his type of grade. 8.22 in the L-cone drill, not great stuff. Just for reference, Raekwon Davis, an interior defensive line that's also kind of sniffed first-round grade, he ran, I think, was a 7.95 or something like that. So the 3-cone drill wasn't great. Here's the deal. I went and put a clock on it like he asked us to do on his video he put out today. Ranged anywhere from a 7.55 to a 7.75. So the dude, I don't know what happened at the NFL Combine with Derek Brown, but maybe he just didn't have a great day, Cole, because when you look on the tape, there aren't very many 330-pound men that can move like this. I know you've watched him over the last couple of years. What did you think about what Derek Brown did this past weekend? And does it really matter because the tape's that good?
I think you just kind of hit it on the head. Does the tape really matter? For a guy like Derek Brown, no. I will look at everything that he did at the Combine and take it with a grain of salt. Maybe you don't put him in that conversation for the top 5, top 7 pick at Carolina, but I don't see how a team like Jacksonville, who has a defensive line, or a team like Tampa Bay, who would love to pair someone like him with Vita Vea, pass him up. Or especially if somehow he falls to a team like Dallas that is going to need to build that. I don't see how anyone passes him up. This is a first-round prospect. Yeah. This is a guy who's still top 5 on my board. The tape speaks for itself. Derek Brown is a solidified top 5 player for me. I'm not changing that. Big loser for me, though, would be Javon Kinlaw. I just think that because of him not being able to perform, him having those knee issues, knees for defensive tackles are things that worry me a ton. They worry me because you want to be a 3-down lineman and you have to be able to use your body. I think that he still is a first-round player, but he's the guy who I think is falling towards the end of the first round.
Yeah, back to the Derek Brown conversation. When you just look at the tape, I mean, the short area quickness is insane. So it's one of those things as an evaluator. The numbers are great and all that stuff. It's good data points there at the Combine, but you can't let it trick what you see on film. And for me, it's very, very similar, kind of a different story and different scenario, but it's very similar to what happened to Jeffrey Simmons last year, where the tape is just absolutely phenomenal out of Mississippi State, one of the best interior defensive linemen the SEC seen in the last 5 or 6 years. And he slides all the way down to 17 or so because people can't quite question whatever the medicals were there with the knee injury. They didn't know what was going to happen. You know, maybe he wasn't going to be able to be available at the start of the season. Well, guess what happened? By the end of the playoff season, Jeffrey Simmons was one of the best interior defensive linemen in the playoffs this year. Go look at it. He couldn't be blocked for most of the football game. Derek Brown is one of those individuals. He is an absolute game wrecker. And like you talked about with some of these other guys, you can play him anywhere. You want to play him, you want to play an odd front defense and ask Derek Brown to play a true zero technique and 2 gap in the A-gaps? He can do that. You want him to play a shade technique? He can do that. You want to play inside 2-eye? He can do that, and he can even rush the passer as a 3 technique as well. I've even seen him line up as a head up 5, Cole, and do all kinds of things there at Auburn. So the athleticism was something I didn't expect to see be questioned leaving this process, and it's something that even though, again, he's not a loser in this process, he's going to go top 15 range, top 12 range, but just somebody who's going to get questions now because of that L-cone drill and for the wrong reasons. Let's move into day 4, our last day, and we're running a little short on time. I'll start with my winner. C.J. Henderson looked really, really good, Cole. I know you stole my first guy, Willie Gay Jr., so I'm going to steal C.J. Henderson here. We knew Zach Goodall over there at the Gator Maven, all Gators down there with Zach Goodall told us that he was going to run fast this week, and he did exactly that. 4.39 paired with 20 reps on the bench press with really, really long arms, right? It's a guy with 32-inch arms, longer arms than some of the tackles at the NFL Combine this year. So a really big, really long corner. To see him out there show explosive, show burst, show fluidity in the hips as well. Thought C.J. Henderson pretty much locked himself up as a first-round talent, Cole. What say you? Who was the guy you thought won the day, other than C.J., since I stole it? I know you're doing some research now.
I mean, if I had to go my next big guy, I would go probably with the 2 LSU defensive backs in Grant Delpit and Christian Fulton. I think they solidified themselves as first-round talent. These are guys who I think were kind of on that fringe. You didn't really know where to play them. I think both of them ran good 40 times. I think both of them had great hit movement in the defensive back drills. They both showed their speed. They both showed their ability to make plays in the open field. And when you watch the tape, you're going to want a guy like Grant Delpit playing your single high cover one safety.
Absolutely.
That's that rangy guy. Christian Fulton, I think, was always a better prospect than Greedy Williams. And I think that's why he's getting more love out of this because of, I know. I thought Greedy was good. I knew Christian Fulton was good. And I think that even Derek Stingley, however you say his name, is even better than both of them. And he will be in the next 2 years when he declares for the NFL draft. I think both of them are first-round players. I expect them to be in that range of the playoff teams. So 2 playoff teams, probably Philadelphia. I'm hearing New England is a name that really fell in love with Delpit. And, with the aging of Jason McCourty, Devin McCourty, it would make sense. Also, I've heard that Green Bay also thinks that he could be a very solid prospect if they were to cut some money here and there to make room for with someone like Adrian Amos or moving him down in the position to play a 3 defensive back system. That'd be another good fit for him. But I think both of them are going to be first-round picks.
Hell, 3 safety system there in Green Bay. Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, and Grant Delpit would be rather terrifying.
You're not going to get him.
I don't think it would be. I don't know how it would be productive. One of them would end up just playing slot corner, but nonetheless, it would be dynamic, right? Some 3 really, really talented football players. I'll stick with a winner, and I'll end it here on the show tonight, and we'll let you close with a loser. But I got to talk about my guy, J.R. Reed. Look, it's a guy who had 42 consecutive starts at Georgia after transferring from Tulsa. Kirby Smart said he's one of the best decisions they've ever made in the transfer market because as soon as he got on campus, he was an absolute leader and led the exact right way and by example and playing hard and playing smart. For him to go out to the combine at 6'2", 6'1", 202 pounds and broad jump 10.8, not great, but run a 4.54 and vert 34. He showed a little bit of that burst and explosion that some scouts might have questioned heading into this process. I thought he was a day 3 guy going into the NFL Combine. I don't think he jumped into a day 2 conversation, unfortunately, but I think he definitely enhanced his draft stock and at least made people go back and try to figure out why he was so successful at the University of Georgia outside of the intangibles. The problem with J.R. Reed is NFL scouts don't know if he could play single high safety. All he did at Georgia was play in the box. That's why he almost led the team in tackles for 3 straight seasons. He was top 3 in tackles for 3 straight years. Single high safeties that are playing deep, cover 3 aren't exactly doing that in tackle production, okay? And the ball production is not exactly there either. He's made some, in his career at Georgia, he made some disruptive plays, but it wasn't filling the stat sheet by any stretch of the means. But for him to go out and test relatively well, that's not a blowing it out of the water kind of combine. We didn't expect that from J.R. Reed, but I think he did better than most scouts expected him to do.
Yeah, I think J.R. Reed is definitely going to be someone who has a draftable grade. I think both you and I had a player in Kendrick Rogers and Reed who need to have good combines. I think both had good combines, and both are now getting draftable grades. But the biggest loser in the SEC on Sunday easily has to be Cameron Dantzler out of Mississippi State. This was a guy who a lot of teams, I was talking to some scouts, they thought maybe he was a fringe late day 1 in that same conversation as Jeff Gladney out of TCU. Definitely an early day 2 pick, but a 4.62 40 and healthy doing that. Cornerbacks are supposed to be in that 4.4, 4.38 range. If you're not there and don't have the size, you are moved to safety at the next level. And with no experience playing that position, that hurts your draft stock a little bit. So this is a guy in Dantzler who is a good cornerback. It has the press coverage, is someone who can make plays in the open field and is a willing tackler. But the speed's not there. And when everyone else has speed, it pushes you down the depth chart. I now expect him to be a day 2 pick solidified and probably a late day 2 pick at this point.
Yeah, I think, Deion Sanders said it on the broadcast during the NFL Combine Sunday that it pretty much locks his move up to safety. I mean, it's what it was kind of moving towards. A lot of scouts might have thought that's what the ending point was going to be for Dantzler anyways. It's a big corner, right? 6'2", 190 pounds with the frame to add up to 10 or 15 more pounds once he fully develops in the NFL anyways. So I don't think the 4.64 just removes him from the conversation of staying out there at corner, because we've seen long arm corners like Richard Sherman be able to do it with that type of 40 time. I believe Richard Sherman was in the 4.6 range during his NFL combine.
4.59 or something like that.
4.59. So we're splitting. Yeah, we're splitting hairs at this point. A better start from Dantzler, and he's probably right around in that Richard Sherman range. So people can do it, but that's the exception, right? You never want to draft off the exception. You want to draft off of what you know and what you can quantify. So I think it pretty much pushes him back to that safety position. And he's got the ball skills. And guess what? The tape screams physicality too. So, I mean, he's going to be able to do it if asked. I know he hasn't done it there at Mississippi State, but the physicality shows on film. So maybe he's a willing tackler. Who's to say if an NFL team comes to him and says, look, Cameron, the only way we're drafting you in the top 40 picks is if you'll commit to playing safety and sticking your nose in the game and tackling. He'll more than likely do it and say right on. So, Cole, let's send it out on that note. Tell the people how they can find your great work, my man.
SI.com/TAMU, allaggies.com, another way. And last but not least, Mr. Thompson, right? All right around there, Mr. Thompson. That's all you got to do. Follow me on Twitter. I always give a shout out back.
All right, wave bye to the folks, Cole. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, you know what the deal is. This has been SEC Nightly. We do this joint Monday through Friday, starting typically at 9 p.m. I mean, we might start a little bit later depending on what we got going on. You know, the great thing about being your own boss, being your own producer, being your own filmographer, being your own green screen setter-upper, being your own DJ, all that good stuff, guess what? You work on your own time schedule. I mean, that's the way it is, right? Be your own boss, make your own time schedule. But I appreciate you making me and us here at SEC Nightly a part of your time and a part of your schedule tonight. I appreciate you for being here. Before you leave, please show us some support and feel free to follow us on Twitter at SEC Nightly. That's where we do all of our show scheduling. So if there's any schedule in the show timing or any times changes in the schedule, we will let you know over there. Anyways, SEC Nightly, Monday through Friday. A little tease before you leave. I saw Jermaine Burton, Georgia signee, do something absolutely nuts and crazy tonight. It'll be out tomorrow on BulldogMaven.com. Probably going to go viral. Okay, I'm just going to let you know that. It was a pretty daggum good football catch over there, working out in the bubble with Terrence Edwards. TE, Wide Receiver Academy. Y'all go check that dude out. He's the best doing it in this business. And he helps me out a lot. He helps my job. It makes it a lot easier. I just get to go to one place as a recruiting analyst and an evaluator. If I want to go see a good wide receiver, I go to one place. I go to Terrence's place because he's got all the dudes. If there's an upcoming wide receiver in the state of Georgia, or heck, even outside the state lines, he's probably going into there and getting some tutelage from the Georgia greats. So we appreciate him for all his support and allowing us some access to some of the top talents here in the state of Georgia, including Jermaine Burton. So be on the lookout for that. Pretty crazy stuff and good stuff from the Georgia signee. So we will sign off with that. We will see you guys tomorrow night.